love the live band, guys. Thank you very much. Anyone have school-aged children in the room? Does anyone know what the Pomodoro method is? What is it? 25 minutes, you said it, and if you really love someone, you buy them a little tomato clock, and then it ticks down. And what are you supposed to do at the end of 25 minutes? You're supposed to get up and do something. How many 25-minute blocks have you been in? Many. So I'd like everyone just to stand up. I'm going to use a little behavioral science on you. The other thing we know about behavioral science, this is my background, is that right now your brain is like trying to sort into a lot of packets, all this stuff we've heard from farming to AI to caregivers. So I want us just to take a collective breath, and I want you to sort for a moment so you're ready to hear us. Isn't that nice to do? Okay. If you want to close your eyes, you can be bold, but don't fall over if you're on the stairs. Okay, we'll close our eyes for a second. You can breathe in. Hold it. And breathe out. Because you're such a beautiful crew, we'll do it again. Breathe in. And breathe out. Okay, you can take a seat. Now we're ready. Now, the funny thing about that is I went to school at a place called UC Santa Cruz. It was a clothing optional university. That's not why I chose it, and I did wear clothes every day. There were people who only wore Birkenstocks. And that a lot of people think, oh, breathing is hippie, right? But now we know, if anyone went to the psychedelics, that actually being a leader requires understanding how your body reacts to your brain. That's leadership. So thank you so much for starting like that. So to kick us off, I want to tell you why this is so important to me. So I'm a lifelong political entrepreneur. I build businesses and organizations that help make government and politics better. I'm one of those crazy ones that believes that we can have politics and government that work for us. And obviously, you may or may not know this, but the government workforce is the largest workforce in the world, 200 million people. And we did a recent study of not all 200 million, but a sample size of those, and only 15% of them said that they were AI ready. What's interesting about that is the demand to learn about AI is coming from the bottom up. So this is leading from the bottom up versus leading from the bottom down. We also recently did a report on AI and political leadership, and the vast majority of politicians were on the defense about AI versus seeing how the offense could, how AI could help them connect better with citizens, make better policy decisions. So this is deeply personal for me and people and the planet. So before I jump in and cue Thomas and Carl, I want to hear a little bit from you. So in terms of your perception of the fast and effective adoption of AI in Europe, I'm going to be a little bit Europe-centric, how do you think Europe is doing? 5 if you think Europe is like so good at fast and good adoption. And there's no judgment about whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. I'll leave that for your mind. 5 if you think it's good. 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, ready? Your perception of speed and effectiveness of AI adoption in Europe. 5. There's one person there, Mabel. Okay. 4, 3, 2, 1. You meant 1. I was like, Mabel, you must mean 1. Yeah, the other way around. Okay, so the majority are around 2, so this is a benchmark for our conversations. Now, in your organization, so if you have a boss around and you're in charge of it, then maybe you want to not tell the truth about it, but in your organization, how speed and effectiveness, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, thanks. Now I'm going to ask the important question, because leadership starts from yourself often. How good are you at the speed and effectiveness of AI? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. There's a correlation, by the way, I could see with organizations and people's own use, right? So it's hard to lead on things we aren't comfortable with or know, even if we're uncomfortable with parts of AI. So let's turn it over to you two. I asked you both to prepare a killer stat or killer story to say why AI and leadership is so important now and what we can learn from it. Thomas.
$41 trillion.
How much again?
$41 trillion.
Okay.
$41 trillion is the number from actually Morgan Stanley about the potential economic value AI is actually generating. And for me, that's always inspiring, because that's the potential we all have. So if I think about AI, it's a massive opportunity for growth. Now you talked about Europe and the status of Europe. Now, specifically for Germany, we just saw the numbers. We are stagnating. We even have a declining GDP. I mean, how can that be? On the one hand side, we see this massive potential economic value. On the other hand side, we are stagnating or even declining in Germany and Europe, stagnating from a business perspective. That tells us something. That tells us something that we all are excited about opportunity of AI, but the adoption, and I think it's very well represented here in the group, is definitively not that far in Europe from a pure adoption perspective. We see a lot of POCs with a lot of interest, but a productive use of AI is certainly something where I want to encourage everybody to actually take the lead to that point, to use it, to try it out, to make use out of it. Even if it's not perfect yet, even if there's a risk, even we heard about hallucinations before and everything, for sure, it's not perfect. But we should not make the mistake to wait to the perfect moment, because then, quite frankly, the rest of the world, they will be far ahead of that one. And we need to embrace it early. And you mentioned about also the personal development, the learning aspect in the workforce. For sure, this is something which is touching every generation, basically touches every job. And that's the reason for us, also from a leadership perspective, how can we help the workforce to embrace AI, the usage of AI, the understanding what it means. And then for sure, we talk about classical topics like data and all the goodness. But for that 1 trillion, that's the price to take for all of us.
And what is that amount comparable to in Europe?
Actually, the GDP of Germany.
The
Think about
GDP
that.
of Germany, right? So here we go. Now, Carl, we're going from SAP, right? What percentage of businesses do you touch in Germany, Thomas?
In Germany?
Yeah.
I think worldwide we touch 87% of the world's global commerce.
87%. 87%. So let's 9 out of 10 businesses, we'll round it up.
That's fair to say.
Okay, so we have the business sector. Now let's go to the academic. You can play the academic today. Carl, you're at Oxford and you look at AI and work. What's your killer stat or story?
So I think, first of all, I very much agree with Thomas that increasing productivity should be a key priority for Europe. And in fact, it's not just Europe that is stagnating. Even the United States and China, we've seen a decline in productivity over the past decade. And so reviving that through AI is a key priority across the board. But I also do think that we need to think about resilience. So let me give you a story. Most of you will probably have heard the story of AlphaGo beating the world champion at Go back in 2016. I suspect that fewer of you will have heard that last year human amateurs using standard computers beat the best AI Go programs quite easily. What does that teach us about AI? Well, even in cases where you see AI surpassing human performance, you can't be sure if it works or to what degree it works when novel circumstances emerge. We see the same with LLMs. They perform very well on tests that have been published before the cutoff date up until which they've been trained. They perform no better than chance on new types of questions. And so what that means is that AI can be extremely powerful in improving productivity in normal times. But under special circumstances, when new challenges emerge, it doesn't perform as well. And so the key task for leadership, whether in the public sector or in the private sector, or for that matter in academia, is to figure out the right balance. If the world was just a static distribution of events, then AI could probably solve everything. All we need is bigger models. But the world is not just a static distribution of events. It changes every time. And so leaders need to figure out how much novelty, how much uncertainty are you actually dealing with in a given activity when you assign AI to increase productivity. Because what can be really productive and really efficient for a period of time could actually be fatal when shocks happen.
Well, let me go back to you, and then I'll come. You're the professor. We're talking about learning from the past. Take us back to some other technological revolutions. What can we learn from the past in order to inform leadership today?
So if we go back to the 1990s, not everybody benefited from the computer revolution the same way. It's particularly an American story. And so back in the 80s, Bob Solow, a Nobel Prize-winning economist, puzzle that we see computers everywhere, but in the productivity statistics. The productivity boom only happened in the 1990s, and to a much larger degree in the United States than in Europe. Why is that? Well, firms needed to adjust and reorganize in order to take advantage of this new technology. And as a general rule, decentralized firms did much better during the computer revolution than more hierarchical companies. The simple reason is that the people that are the closest to the technology actually know the most about it. And when you're in a period of technological turbulence, you need to give people the decision-making autonomy to actually experiment with the technology to reap the benefits from it. And secondly, what you need to do is to reward experimentation. If all you do is rewarding performance in very narrowly defined tasks, well, nobody will experiment because you need to devote resources and time to do that. And if you're increasing or decreasing your performance in your daily job doing so, there's no incentives for it. So you need more decision-making autonomy to lower levels of the organization, and you need to shape reward systems accordingly as well.
Well, it's interesting. I was reading that a lot of companies, or a number of companies now, are actually paying people for this experimentation. I heard one company's $10,000 award for someone who experiments and comes up. It doesn't even have to increase productivity, but comes up with a new idea. I'm going to move to just off the back of this to you, Thomas, because we're talking about AI adoption at speed and scale. We talked about needing courage, and there's going to be some risks. Talk more concretely about what that means for how you see it for companies. What are the carrots that need to be created? What are the sticks? What's working and what's not? And what's the baseline education? It's like who's doing it really well?
I think the carrot and the stick is a concept where I'm not always positive about the carrot and stick. I think it's more the internal motivation which we should stimulate. Exactly about the innovation culture we should talk about, that people are actively embracing new things and try that out. I think that's what we need to foster, and that's a leadership task in that sense. And here what we clearly see from that one, you need to provide the trainings and the learnings for everybody. You need to give them time, and hopefully they leverage the time appropriately to embrace it. Let's give you an example for SAP as a concrete company who's really embracing AI everywhere. I mean, all of our developers use Gen AI to develop our code and the testing. All of our colleagues in support use it to basically respond to the tickets. Actually, we went that boat last year that most of the commercials which all of you have seen is purely Gen AI driven, even the graphics and all of that. And we just use it and try it out in a modern way. And that's something where a couple of years back, I mean, all of that would be super strong governed. What is brand perspective? Can you do that or not? And now let's give it a try. And to that point, this experimentation, that innovation culture is something which is more important than ever. And that comes for sure with different leadership requirements and skills, like adaptability in that sense, which is required more than ever. And what is also a topic, you need to give employees also the feeling that they are in a safe, protected environment in that sense. Because let's be honest, there's, especially also in Europe, a lot of concerns about will there be a job loss or something like that based on productivity gains from AI. But I do fundamentally believe we also need to change the conversation from job security to skill security. Because if you have a skill security, for sure, jobs will change. Actually, as we speak, 60% of all the roles, and most probably all of the roles you actually fulfill, are actually created after 1940. So we have different roles, and basically 85% of the growth in jobs is coming from new technologies because we embrace new topics and new revolutions in technology. So it's always an upside and potential for more jobs. But for sure, the fear is in the workforce, and that's something where we, as leaders, certainly have a clear goal to ensure that we have the right environment to do that without having the fear of losing the job. Because guess what? If somebody says, oh, I experiment, I find the productivity, and then we can replace 10 people, they have fear to do that experimentation. And that's the reason you need the right innovation environment, and then the rest will thrive. And again, culturally, there will be a lot of organizations who are intrinsically not open to that, and that's what we need to change. So we need different leadership in the time of AI.
And Carl, have you seen an example of how that has changed in an organization? You know, how did they change it? You said through history that fragmentation often was what allowed innovation to happen. Are you seeing this happen with AI as well?
Well, I do certainly think it's true that the fragmentation that we do have in Europe creates different pockets to experiment. At the same time, though, it's creating regulatory burdens for scaling. And so one of the advantages I think the United States has with the federal system is that it has both the decentralized possibilities for regional experimentation. The second industrial revolution happened in New England. The computer revolution happened in Silicon Valley. Big part of the reason for that is that non-compete clauses avoid in California, so job hopping is just more common than it is in New England or indeed Michigan, which used to have the same sort of regulation but reversed that in the 1980s, for example. But then they also have a huge internal market, which is relatively free of barriers for firms to scale. I think Europe has the diversity. It certainly has the talent. It certainly has even more diversity when it comes to different cultures, languages, etc. But what can be good for innovation can also inhibit scaling. And I think finding the right balance there is hard. And I do worry that some of the recent regulations, like the AI Act, for example, might create a more fragmented market.
Thank you. I want to talk a little bit more about leadership. When you meet Thomas, he's infectious. People take selfies with him, even here. So positive. And when I talk to you about AI, you're like, it's courage, and we have to do this, and we have to be hopeful. I mean, the future positive, and you embody that. AI is going to change leadership. We don't know how, but how do you think it is going to change leadership? What are leaders going to need to do differently? What skills are leaders going to need to have that they don't have now or emphasize more with the rise of AI?
I think you mentioned already the word courage. I think courage is exactly the right thing, what we all need to embrace way more actively. And that also comes along with curiosity, which means you don't know what's right, you don't know what's perfect. You experiment to that point. And this is something where you need to give yourself into a moment where you're not in the comfort zone. You basically will push your boundaries, get out of the comfort zone. And it will not directly feel good because you don't know the straight line to success. And especially with AI and everything what's coming, it's so fast moving that it's anyway never done. I mean, 1.5 years ago, or last year in DLD, we talked about Gen AI. This year we talk about agentic AI. Then we most probably next year talk about the next already revolution, how this AI game is going. And then in 3 years from now, quantum will be the pervasive discussion, which also means leaders have the challenge to be open to new things where they're not the experts, to embrace that, but still having the environment that the teams are thriving, that the people can gain these skills in that sense, but not be afraid about what's coming, but embracing the change. And that's certainly something where I think for sure also if we are here in Europe, culturally, this is something which is pushing us, because certainly in different geographies, there's a different openness to new horizons. But I think it's super required for us. And as a society, I feel what we need way more is positivity in general about the future. I'm not sure how you feel it, but the last couple of weeks and months, I think it's too much negativity, it's too much hate, it's too much disrespect in this society, and it's to all of us to change the tone here, because there's so much goodness what we can do together, and the energy we can free up, and that's, I think, a key leadership task, how to stimulate this energy which is driving this openness in the ecosystems, the partnerships to thrive together. Because also, if you think about AI, it's not the one takes all or the winner takes it all. It's actually partnerships in this ecosystem, how many companies come together to hopefully do something good. And then, I mean, let's take the one topic which was mentioned earlier about the energy consumption for AI. On the one hand side, that's a huge concern for everybody. But think about, from a sustainability angle, if you use AI in the right way, that we can solve, hopefully, significant portions to optimize carbon footprints in the supply chain, for instance, which may way bigger positive impact than the energy consumption of AI. And that's what we need to also, we have always the choice to look at the negatives and the concerns or the positive opportunities. And I, for sure, as you hopefully see, I'm a positive person. I believe it's the greatest time to live in, actually, while we have the most uncertain time, in the last decades. But the opportunity is for us to really take that.
As an American who has been coming to Germany for 27 years and has founded a bunch of companies in Germany, one of the differences I noticed between American entrepreneurs, and particularly German ones, because that's where I spend most of my time, is that Americans see an obstacle and they come together to figure out how to tear it down. And the successful entrepreneurs in Europe, like there's the obstacle and the obstacle is the way. Like what's the opportunity? And boy, are we living in times where anti-fragility, like how do you take obstacles as an opportunity? And I think if we can embrace, not pretend like the world is, everything's gonna be great, but how do you take the challenge as an opportunity? I wanna do one follow-up question. I'm gonna ask you the leadership one. Have you changed how you recruit and hire at SAP for this speed and complexity of our times? Have you noticed that you look more for that intrinsic curiosity, that intrinsic risk-taking? Has it changed your workforce?
I think so. And I think in general, I mean, I personally, but also the organization itself, we hire more for attitude and for the potential in people. Because fundamentally also, if you think about knowledge these days, I mean, with this amazing global public LLMs which we have, I mean, knowledge is at hand. Knowledge will not differentiate it. It's about, can people continuously learn? Are they eager to learn the next thing? What's the attitude to learning and to these things? So hire for attitude. The rest you can learn quickly if you have the right people. And then you're also always on top of the curve for innovation. So I think hiring is absolutely changing these days. And I think also I would argue, if you think about now that as we speak in the year 2025, 1/4 of the global workforce is in the meantime Gen Z. They have also different expectations towards the workplace for employers, quite frankly. And that's the reason why, in order to get the best of that, you actively need to think about what's the work environment this workforce want to work for, and that's what we need to certainly build up together. So hiring definitively changed in the company.
Does Thomas Saueressig run a boot camp for positivity at SAP?
No, but I...
You could.
But I think it's not about running boot camps. It's about really stimulating the environment that also everybody sees the positive opportunity we have. And to your point, the biggest obstacle should be the biggest opportunity for us to tarry. And I think that's a great statement what you did here.
Obstacle is the way. How is leadership going to change in the age of AI?
So I think one underappreciated point is that AI is going to increase the value of impersonal skills, which leaders ought to have. If AI writes your love letters and everybody else's, the first date becomes more important. And the same thing applies in the business setting. If you're doing sales, for example, and everybody's using AI for sales, how are you distinguishing yourself in such a world? Well, you're doing it through in-person communication. And so what we've been seeing over the past couple of years with the rise of remote work, they can function very well for certain tasks and increasing productivity in relatively routine operations, for example. But when it comes to training new talent who comes in, the way you learn is by watching and copying behavior. And if nobody else is there, who do you copy? And in addition to that, we need these in-person communication skills, and practice matters in that regard too, right? And I'm saying this as an academic who is Swedish on top of that, and so you can imagine how good my personal skills are.
Well, I see a business opportunity to retrain human beings how to be human again. It seems like I think you're just fine, your interpersonal skills.
Thank you.
I want to take us a little bit out and think about the future, and all of you all, 5, 10, 15 years. You've written a bunch, Carl, about how the workforce is going to change, what jobs will go away, what jobs will stay. And on a lighter note, although a serious one, that we are going to change, right, how our jobs. And Esther was talking about the need for caregiving, and we're seeing some caregiving done by robots in Japan to deal with elderly demographic difference, but we still need people. We are, some people say, between 5 and 10 years away from artificial wombs being the way for people to have babies. So the world is going to change. So I asked them both to share with me, when AI comes to really change your job, or maybe take it away, what job do you want to have? And Carl, I'm going to start with you.
The one I currently have, minus the admin.
Minus the admin. Anyone else want your current job minus the admin? I'm using an AI right now that writes draft responses to all my emails, and it's reducing my admin. I'm putting my own personal touch on it. And how about you? You want your, it's okay, I don't know if there's any other executive board members from SAP here, but it's okay if you don't want your same job.
No, I mean, if AI would take my job away, quite frankly, it's a fun thing, but I would love to be a barista.
A barista?
Yeah, manual-made perfect coffee. Imagine that one. It's amazing. It's an art form, and the communication with your customer, this is something AI will never be able to replace.
Well, what do you think if we just get him after this, we walk him up and he can take over the middle section? Would you all stand in line for a coffee from him? It'll be the most positive AI leadership ready barista maybe we've ever had, I'm assuming, in this communication house. So I want to leave the sort of the last impression to you all. When I had the honor of talking to them, I said, what do you want out of this? Like, why are you doing this? Why are we taking your time, actually, to be here? And they said, well, I really want to give people some sense of courage, hope, and inspiration. So please don't bullshit us. I'm going to ask you again. 5 being, I am more inspired, like a lot more, and 1 being, I'm not, in 25 minutes. That is manipulating you a little bit. But I'm going to ask you, I'll tell you I am. I'm going to be always transparent about it. How much more inspired are you to be an AI leader for yourself or others? 5. Okay, we needed to dial it up. Maybe free coffees up there already. 4, 3, 2. Okay, well, we move them from their own feelings after, and 1. Who are you? Brave. Oh, I thought you were going to raise your hand. Well, with that, thank you, everyone. And I want to thank you both for bringing your positive, evidence-based, good ideas. And as, like I said, an American, hopefully will be a German the next year, if the bureaucracy will let me. I'm really hopeful that we can grab this positive spirit in Europe and see the obstacle as a way. We really need this from us all. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.